What up, guys? Miguel here of Yugatech, and this is the OPPO Reno 10x Zoom. Let's put the shark away. So I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of the shark fin phone OPPO's been cooking up. That's kind of an animal rights issue, isn't it? Anyways, that's this guy right here. This is OPPO's flagship entry for the year, and I must say, I'm kind of a fan. Starting off with design. Like most flagships nowadays, the OPPO Reno 10x Zoom is clad in glass. Unlike most flagships, there is no camera hub on this device. The camera module at the back is flush under that Gorilla Glass 5 protection. And OPPO also added this ceramic little nipple here too. They're calling it the O-dot. It's basically there to protect the glass in front of the camera module from getting scuffed and stuff when laid down flat on a surface. And it does work. You do get some wobble because of the O-dot, but only if you tap at the top of the device. Our unit is in the jet black color and it does look super clean. I do prefer the ocean green color they have like on our unit of the standard Reno more, but the black's cool too. The gradient on these phones go from side to side and I'm really a fan of this one. The way the sheen passes through reminds me of like satin fabric and I think it's dope. In front, you get a true full screen display, no notch, no pinhole, just display. One of the main attractions of this device is the pop-up shark fin. On the fin, you can find the front-facing camera, speaker grill, and front-facing flash. That's also where the flash for the rear cameras are, so do note that if you're using your flashlight, that fin is out. Now, do I dig it? I mean, I actually like it more than the standard pop-up cameras we've seen. It's different and it's unique and I like that. You also get a pass-through speaker grill on the top bezel. Just wanted to mention that if you were wondering how you take calls, so yeah, no need to worry about that fin poking your ears. For buttons and ports, starting on the left side, you can find your volume buttons. Up top, aside from the fin, there is a noise-canceling mic for speakerphone. At the right, you can find the green accented power button. Lastly, at the bottom, you get your hybrid dual SIM plus micro SD card tray, USB Type-C, noise-canceling mic for calls, and 1 out of 2 media speakers. So far, I am a fan of the design choices OPPO made. Ergonomics are on point, it feels good in the hands. Without a case, it can get slippery, especially if on a fabric surface. The one thing I feel iffy about with this device in terms of design is the size. The length is at 6.38 inches, and I do find it to be on the plus size of the smartphone spectrum. You guys might be into that or not, so just thought I'd share. Moving to display. The Reno 10x Zoom gets a 6.6-inch Full HD Plus AMOLED panel, and it does look good. It isn't the best panel I've laid my eyes on in terms of brightness and image quality, but AMOLED plus a big non-intrusive display for media consumption. The display is also protected with Gorilla Glass 6, so it's great to know that you get Gorilla Glass protection from both sides of the phone. I mean, it gives me more of a peace of mind, so that's nice. You also get an always-on display feature here. On ColorOS, it's called off-screen clock. I think it would have been nice if you could get some notifications here as well, maybe in a future update. It is nifty to have this thing on if your main form of biometric security is the in-display fingerprint scanner, in my opinion. Going back to media consumption, Netflix on this thing is just like eyes glued to screen 24/7. Oh, and the best part? Yeah, no 3.5mm audio jack here, but you get a stereo audio setup, so finally a true all-screen smartphone that thought about built-in audio hardware too. And it is toy. The speaker on this thing gets so loud. Like, did I just buy a smartphone or did I get a Bluetooth speaker as well? Now let me show you guys how this thing sounds like. Actually, I'll bring out my S10 here for comparison as well. This has stereo speakers, this has stereo speakers. So that's the Reno 10x Zoom. This is the Galaxy S10. One thing I did notice is that since they are stereo speakers, it does use the call speaker as the output for the highs and half the mids, and the bottom firing one gets the other half of the mids and most of the lows. But if we cover the bottom ones, you can see that this is the Reno 10x Zoom. That's the Galaxy S10. I do honestly think that the S10 does sound more full, and in terms of quality, I mean, they're both tuned by Dolby, so that's nice. You don't get the Dolby enhancement feature on the OPPO like you do on the S10, but either way, I'm really enjoying these speakers. So if you were just gonna go on Netflix all day and you're like, uh-oh, I only have a 3.5mm audio jack type of earbuds and you don't got your Type-C earbuds, do not fret. The onboard speaker on this phone is amazing. Next up, performance. For hardware, the Reno 10x Zoom is equipped with a Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 and an Adreno 640 GPU. When it comes to configurations, like I said earlier, our unit is the 8GB of RAM plus 256GB of internal storage variant. For software, you get Android 9 Pie out of the box with ColorOS 6 skinned on top. I'm not the biggest fan of ColorOS, but it's really not that bad. I went through the theme store and it just had to slap a dark theme on, which left me feeling like I wish that it had a built-in dark mode to it. I also wish that the drop-down and settings menu weren't so iOS-esque. I mean, the Apple influence did help me a bunch when it came to navigations. I switched to gestures and found that I was way more used to the iOS copy-paste gesture configuration, so I guess it all worked out in the end. I did find the 3-finger swipe up for split screen really useful since there really isn't a way to activate split screen quickly if you're using a gesture-based navigation system. When it came to day-to-day tasks like being on social media, consuming media, and playing a bunch of games, the Reno 10x Zoom handled it like a true flagship. No lags, no delay, apps open fast, no complaints. If you're interested in benchmark scores, I'll have them flash on screen now. For battery, the Reno 10x Zoom gets an impressive 4065 mAh battery capable of 20-watt VOOC flash charge. In our standard video loop test, the device lasted a whopping 23 hours and 3 minutes. So yes, the Reno 10x Zoom can surely last you 2 days if you were pushing it. The best thing about it though for me is the inclusion of VOOC. It literally takes no more than an hour to charge up this 4065 mAh cell with the included charger. That's bonkers. When it comes to biometrics, you get optical facial recognition on here, and it does work especially quick for a pop-up camera. It's been my main way of unlocking the device, and I didn't find it to be a problem. I've probably had more uh-ohs unlocking the device with the optical in-display fingerprint scanner, but then again, take that with a grain of salt. That in-display fingerprint scanner is actually real quick compared to in-display scanners of early 2019, and I'd say it works 9 times out of 10. Moving on to the cameras. The Reno 10x Zoom gets a triple camera setup that consists of a 48-megapixel main shooter, an 8-megapixel ultra-wide, and a 13-megapixel periscopic telephoto lens. On the front-facing side of things, you can find the 16-megapixel selfie camera in the fin. Now, it's interesting to see a periscope camera capable of some lengthy zooms that isn't on the P30 Pro from Huawei. And truth be told, OPPO actually debuted this innovation first at MWC 2019. So if you guys were a fan of that periscope system on the P30 Pro but were kind of afraid to get the device due to what's been going on with the Huawei ex-American trade ban, this could very well be a sound alternative. Let us know in the comment section below if you want to see a camera comparison between the OPPO Reno 10x Zoom and the Huawei P30 Pro. Alright, let's get into those samples. In this first shot, we got some food porn vibes, and just look at that detail. Not to mention, this was in the default photo mode and it automatically got the aperture down to 1.7 so that this standard shot could get some sweet bokeh. In this second shot, I got to visit Art Island over the weekend and I brought the Reno 10x Zoom with me. So here I am surfing, and I do have the dazzle color option off for all the samples. I'm kind of a fan of the color reproduction here. The colors are vibrant and the skin tone seems to be right. Exposure is also perfect here. Now, in this shot, we're using the ultra-wide lens, and it isn't the widest I've used, but it gets pretty wide when you compare it to the standard 1x. What really got my attention with these shots was the building in the background. Like, wow, the dynamic range is impressive. I thought to keep zooming into it until I hit that hybrid 10x zoom. At 2x, it kind of overexposed the buildings here. I may have been focused on the plants though, so that's why. At 6x, it corrects itself. This is 10x. Now we can see here that the image quality does take a slight hit compared to the standard focal length, but the quality compared to a digital 10x is unparalleled. In this next shot of the Makati skyline, we kind of get an idea of how the Reno's post-processing works. And to be frank, it isn't my favorite, but it does have its moments. Here we can see that it likes to up the contrast, sharpen, and crush the blacks a tad bit more than I like. I'm also not a fan of the cooler white balance it tends to favor, making stuff that are green look unnatural and making the shadows shadows come off with a slightly bluish tint. This is the same shot in 2x. The sharpness took a hit here, but that's fine because details are still intact. This is in 6x, focusing on the crane now. This is once again 10x. The image really does look more musky in comparison to even just the 2x, although everything should be fine as long as you don't pixel peep. Now, some of you might not know this, but the Reno 10x zoom does get a digital zoom capable of going up to 60x. For those curious, this is what that looks like. It's basically a watercolor mess, and the post-processing didn't even mind to sharpen the image at all at this point. Moving to night mode, this photo is on the default photo mode for reference. This is with night mode on. Again, that dynamic range is working its ass off here and it pulls through. This shot is taken in a parking lot, and just look at those details from the ceiling. I think it's amazing the camera picked that all up. This is with night mode on. I mean, the photo didn't actually need it, but I was curious. It did make the initial fluorescent light less overexposed and the image is brighter overall. Details were well preserved and we also got a boost in saturation. In this last night mode set, I wanted to take things indoors. This is again in the default photo mode. This is with night mode on. It literally looks like I turned the lights on, but I swear I did not. Now, to be honest, for night mode, this isn't the best device you can get for that, but it definitely is still something. Looking at portrait mode now, in this shot, subject background separation is very good. It isn't perfect, but I'm totally fine with it either way. Moving to the front-facing side of things, we have Ira over here, and it does a fantastic job, especially for a selfie. The photo is highly detailed, dynamic range again on point, and yeah, it looks good. You also get a front-facing flash for when lighting becomes poor and you just need that well-lit selfie. When it comes to portrait selfies, in terms of detail, it's just as good as the regular selfies. For background subject separation, it may perform a little bit worse compared to rear portraits, but it gets the job done, even with harsh backlighting. Although, when it comes to more challenging situations, it may have a little trouble like you see here. It almost got it perfectly, but the tip of the leaf didn't get blurred out, and it could have done a better job with my left shoulder as well. Before we move on to some video samples, I do want to mention that the portrait selfie has this weird thing going on. It tends to detect any face it can find, so yeah, that makes sense maybe if you're next to someone in the selfie, but when people are in the background just like here, it can look really weird. This doesn't happen with the rear shooter though. Our guess is it uses one of the other lenses to take in depth information. The front-facing shooter on the other hand seems to rely too much on facial recognition. Now, I'm not sure if this is a bug that can be fixed with a software update or we're stuck with this. If the latter is the case, you might just want to try your best to keep people's faces out of the background when taking portrait selfies. For video, you can shoot up to 4K in either 60 or 30 frames per second. The image quality from this thing is something I find very usable. Like if you wanted to make vlogs and cinematic shots with a smartphone, the Reno can handle it. I do want to mention that if you want the most stable footage from this phone, you might want to record in full HD because that's when the electronic image stabilization really comes into play. Now, to conclude this video, we gotta talk about price. The Reno 10x Zoom has been launched locally, and officially for our market, the only configuration available is the 8GB of RAM plus 256GB of internal storage, and it gets a price tag of 45,990 pesos. With that in mind, the OnePlus 7 Pro of the same configuration is actually cheaper by 3,000 pesos, and you might want to cop that instead if you don't need that periscopic telephoto lens. This leaves myself with one question. Do I recommend the OPPO Reno 10x Zoom? Well, if you can afford it, you'll be getting a device that can handle your day-to-day tasks easily, great battery performance, great cameras, great speakers, a periscope camera, and let's not forget the novelty of that shark fin. So, what did you guys think of OPPO's 2019 flagship entry? Let us know in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to smack that like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit that bell icon so you get notified for future uploads. Be sure to visit yugatech.com for the latest tech news and reviews. Again, this has been Miguel. I survived the shark attack, and I will see you in the next one.